Welcome to another episode of Get Real. I'm your host, Tom Lemons, here with Mark Cioffi, former commercial airline pilot. And we're going to talk about the recent incidents across the country that has people a little bit concerned and worried should they be flying. And also joined by my producer, Jay Fernandez.
Hey.
So, Mark, go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you've got a huge resume, done quite a lot, and I'd like to hear a little bit about it.
Well, I went to college, and decided that maybe the Air Force was the thing to do. There were no JOBs, when I graduated college in 79. So, 1980, I went down to the recruiter and joined up, figured I'd do my 4 years, be a veteran, and, go from there. But ended up being a 21-year career. Flew helicopters, flew rescue up in Iceland for a couple years. Flew at the presidential wing for a couple years after that, helicopters. And then went back to flight school and got fixed wing qualified. And flew cargo C-141Bs after that. And that's what I retired doing after, in 2001, moved here to Spring Hill. Subsequently was hired. Actually, I was hired before I was even off a terminal leave from the Air Force, and went into Delta Airlines.
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to report to fly with Delta on 14 September 2001.
Mm-hmm.
9/11 happens.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
I spent 6 years furloughed, and that's when I got into industry, got into simulation, and that sort of thing, and worked on the MV-22 project for the Marine Corps, and went back to Delta in 07 and flew the 737 as a first officer and retired as a captain in 22.
So is it safe to say that you know a little bit about flying?
Well, yeah, I've made it my life, my professional life, spent between the two, it was 42 years in aviation, and we still have me and the wife have a small software company that produces T6 Alpha and Bravo for, primarily the thought is there for flight school training. Desktop simulation started in the 90s with Microsoft Flight Simulator type thing, and it keeps getting better and better and better. And it got to a point where I'm looking at it going, golly, somebody needs to produce, a good trainer that's at the desktop level that's less than $100, and you can get a lot of training essay on the aircraft that you're going to first meet in the flight school for the DoD, and I think I want to say there's 16 other countries, maybe more, that use it for a trainer as well.
Mm-hmm. Now these aren't the type of the type of software that where you're actually in one of the the flight simulator. This is something just for desktop, right?
Yeah,
just
learning.
Get a joystick, right?
Yeah, go down to Best Buy and spend $20 or whatever it is, buy a joystick, hook it up. Right. But some of these guys buy our software. I mean, they send us, pictures, and man, they have gone hog wild with it. They got several screens, and really gone. And we've sold it to ROTCs across the country. High schools have bought it to use for for their aviation programs or interests. So it's very gratifying. I mean, it's not a big money maker. We don't,
Well, go ahead and plug the name of your software. Let's hear what it is and where you can get it. Is it commercially available?
Yeah, you can go online. It's Flight Advantage.
Okay.
Just
flightadvantage.com.
Just look it up, and
So do you think the reason that a lot of these planes are having trouble right now is that they're underqualified, these individuals that are in charge right now, or what's going on there?
Well, I have thought a lot about it, and safety is something that starts at the top. It emanates from the top down, and I think my personal opinion is that that's not been the focus of a lot of the previous administration, in particular. But again, I could go back to the affirmative action aspect of things.
Race-based.
Where it's not even race-based. It's, gender-based.
Any kind of DEI.
DEI type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and so when when you're looking at qualifications other than merit-based, you don't get the best of the best. You know what I'm saying?
And do you think that it has actually flown? You think it's dominoed that quickly over the last, let's say, DEI has been around, what, about 4 or 5 years now? You think it's actually become an actual problem at this point?
Well, something's going on for
Well,
sure. That's for sure. I mean, it's weird.
It hasn't helped. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, we can pretty definitively say that it hasn't helped. You know, I look at, you know, the Los Angeles Lakers. They don't, you know, they're hiring the best they can hire, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at a control tower, you know, there's sometimes 4, 5, 6 people up there. It's a team effort, you know, and everybody's got to be on their game.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it's a busy airport or a busy area, and just like using a sports analogy, not everybody has an aptitude for it. And
It's a stressful position.
It is. It is. And, you know, the aviation industry has a lot of stressful areas. I mean, being a pilot, you know, is a stressful aspect of things, you know, periodically. And
Let's take a look at, let's just talk about each incident a little bit. Let's go kind of review it and give us a little feedback on what you think could or couldn't, you know, just your opinion on it.
Sure.
Let's talk about the CRJ 900 well, let's start with the earlier one in DC.
The helicopter one?
Yeah, the one with the Black Hawk that
That's
the collision.
I flew those routes when I was
that exact route.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So let me ask you something.
For a couple years, I mean,
one of the problems that they said could have been, again, I don't think the full report's out yet. Is it? I don't know. But they said that the Black Hawk pilot may have been at the wrong altitude.
pretty definitively was.
Okay. And since you've flown that route, you would know better.
The route down the Potomac is at or below. In other words, maximum altitude is 200 feet. Okay. They were at, according to what I read today, actually, in Aviation Week, it was, they were at 325 minimum. You know, they could have been as high as 375. So they were definitely off altitude.
Now, do you think that now are they connected to the same ATC as the commercial airlines? They are. So they're communicating the same thing.
Yes.
Have you heard of? Were they told to fly that high, or were they?
No,
they were on their own.
Okay. Absolutely not. They were off altitude.
Okay.
I mean, that's going to come out in the report for sure.
Okay.
I mean, but there's other factors there that, having flown there, you're coming down the river at night. You're in D.C. There's a lot of lights, you know, and they said that they saw the traffic. Now, that to me, if they saw the traffic, then they really didn't see that traffic.
Saw the wrong traffic.
Yeah. And there's so many lights, you know, I mean, and there's so many planes that possibly the wrong traffic. And so that, you know, that's a player. The RJ didn't see them until very last. I mean, what we know so far from what I've read is that they pulled up, you know, 1 second before impact or whatever it was. I mean, they saw him last second.
So tragic.
But unfortunately for the RJ, they were originally scheduled to land on runway 1, and they got switched to 3-3.
Right at the last moment, right?
So as a pilot, is that tricky? Or, I mean,
yes, it is.
Yeah, that throws your game.
Well, it throws you off your game a little bit because we call it the heads down display. You have the flight management system that's between the pilots. So when you have a runway change, you have to go down here, change the runway length, change, you know, a bunch of stuff. So usually the pilot not flying does that, okay? The other guy's flying, looking for the runway, looking for, you know, and then he confirms what the other guy did so that you have all the data. So you're doing that while you're flying and configuring, and, you know, so it's a busy it makes it for a very busy cockpit. I could, you know, been there, done that, and you kind of like, you know, and okay, you do this, you know.
And they were already over the Potomac. I mean, they didn't have much time to make that turn, right?
Well, yeah.
How often are they changing your landing positions? I mean,
landing clearances?
Yeah. How often? Is that
not often. I mean, it's not a regular thing. It's a sequence thing where they're trying to, you know, utilize the best that it can, the runways that are available with the traffic that's coming in, with the traffic that's departing. So it's a very choreograted dance that they're doing from the
You got to get that right.
control
Because
tower.
everyone's lives in
And the
it.
pilots are all in on it. I mean, yeah, you know, you're kind of like, yeah, I can make it happen, and you do. But my thought is, you know, they were busy, you know, doing all the necessary requirements to land on 3-3. So they weren't outside the aircraft. Is what I'm saying. Like you might have been.
And they were at the proper rate of descent and everything.
Yeah,
so
they-
they
I guess
were.
here's a question for you. How many times have you been flying the plane and all of a sudden they've said something that you don't agree with, that they may be off, they're trying to change your position, and then you say,
Not-
wait a second, that's not going to work, or you ever get into a battle with them, or you tell them, like, that's not right or
Not
wrong
often.
with their
No,
experience?
and
You know what I'm
you got to
saying?
know
When
that
you're,
I've
like telling them no.
that's not common. That you can say that, you know, unable, you know, and then they have to switch their dance, you know. But that's happened to me. I think more in the military than it did in the civilian,
Okay, 'cause
you know, sector.
So you don't got much time to think about that.
Yeah, well, again, it's part of the stress of the job, and
Right.
you're trained to do it. You know how to do it, and they were doing it.
Yeah.
And if the helicopter hadn't been off altitude, in all likelihood, there wouldn't have been an incident. But it's a chain of events, we call it. You know, when
It's
when these
still an
things-
accident. I mean, it's, you know.
Yeah, well, if they hadn't got to change their clearance and landed on runway 1, nobody would have known. I mean,
Right.
that they were off altitude.
Yeah.
Even, you know, they might have get
It's
some
just
altitude
those-
warning, and you know, somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I think as a passenger, we don't know half of what's going on.
Oh,
Yeah. And I think there was 66 souls on board, I believe, something like
I
that.
believe it was
Yeah.
66 or 67.
something.
but
Those
Sad,
young
tragic
gymnastics team, too,
tragic
like our
scene.
up and coming gymnastics stars. Too.
Yeah.
Sad.
It was,
Gymnastics
something like
or
gymnastics. Ice skating or
ice
gymnastics.
skating.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ice skating.
I think it
So
was.
let's talk about the other CRJ, the one that just recently flipped in Toronto. That was interesting. Now, I want to let you explain it, but there's been a common opinion around that says there's an issue with the rate of descent, or possibly some inexperience issues. But what are your thoughts on that incident?
Well, just like the previous accident, there's the actual what caused it, rate of descent, but what led to it is what we're really going to have to deal with. And my gut reaction on that is that was an experience issue to a great extent. So they're landing with what I've heard is a 30 degree wind, crosswind, which isn't a direct crosswind. It's not 90 degrees. It's 30, but it was gusting and it was challenging. And the way I understand it so far, the first officer was the one doing that landing. And
Maybe shouldn't have been.
well,
in those conditions.
if you're going to let an inexperienced pilot get the experience of landing in such weather, then the captain has to be on his game going, I got the aircraft.
Yeah.
Okay. At the point that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's understood from the get-go. That's not something you had to brief, but that's how it happens. Kind of like my aircraft. Boom,
So
They'll take over right
Is
away.
there that much
Yeah.
manual flying these days? I mean, how much is it manual?
Well, there's
How much
another
is
good
auto?
point.
Yeah.
There's another really good point. When I left Delta, the training department was asking us to do more hand flying,
Yeah.
because the new generation is all about technology. Boom, boom.
It lands automatically.
Yeah, it lands automatically, takes off automatically. It flies automatically. It flies off the mode control panel, and it's wonderful because it will do it exactly. And it'll do it. But you've got to be good at it, and then when it doesn't work or it's not doing what you want it to do, which happens, then you got to do this.
Yeah.
You got to
Be
grab the
prepared right
aircraft
away.
and be able. And what the industry was finding is that going from the mode control panel and flying it via autopilot and going back to hand flying it was something that was.
But it can land autopilot, right?
It can if it's hooked up and ready to go.
Programmed correctly, right?
Yeah. I mean, but it'll unhook in certain circumstances, if it gets potentially if it gets a bad gust of wind, and it goes out of parameters, and you'll get a warning saying autopilot's off, and then you have to take off.
Yeah.
there's that aspect of it. I'll tell you an interesting one relating to me. I went to Delta, and I went from flying what we called steam gauge, not the glass cockpits.
Okay.
Okay. My aircraft for my 21 years were all steam gauge, round dials, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to go to flying glass.
Not all the digital stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And
We've all done it with our cars.
it was a big transition, and so we would be in the simulator and we'd be flying, and I'd lose SA on this stuff, and I punch off the autopilot, and they put it's a simulator on freeze, and I go, what are you doing? I says, I'll fly this, and he goes, we know you can fly it, Mark. You need to learn how to do it,
By the instruments.
Yeah, doing the glass. You need to learn the automation. That's what they wanted to. I was competent, at steam gauge, but when I went to Delta, and I came from the training squadron for those aircraft. So I'd spent 3 years, and previously I'd spent 2 years. So I spent 5 years beating up the pattern, hand flying. So I was very comfortable going, okay, I got it, But they wanted me to learn the automation, and I'm kind of like, I'll learn that. I get it. But trust me, I can fly it. And they go, we trust you. You can fly it. Mm-hmm. But you need to learn the automation. But now that what I'm driving at, these guys are so good at automation, the flip side had happened, and they weren't good at hand flying.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, by the time I was out of Delta, they would encourage us on clear VFR days, just click the autopilot off and hand fly it all the way to.
Yeah.
So this is what your company's trying to do. Get a lot of these individuals before they go into the actual course to get some training on hand flying, correct?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, that's a big part of it. But the other is one of the biggest parts is just developing the glass cockpit cross check. Okay. Where is everything? Because you'll be like a pig looking at a wristwatch, trying to figure out, where something is, if you're just brand new to it, as opposed to having, been there, done that, and have a confidence level that your way around the cockpit.
All right, so Mark, let's talk about the another incident that happened at Midway Airport just a few days ago.
Yeah.
That was scary. I mean, I guess, and you can tell what your thoughts on what happened, but apparently, I don't remember the airlines, but one was about to land.
Southwest
Airline about to land,
yeah.
And it noticed, or they noticed another jet getting ready to cross the runway. You tell us the story.
Well, it was NetJets, so it's as I remember, and the first reaction for many people was, oh, another air traffic controller issue, and not necessarily. And that was totally a pilot issue. Okay, ATC, air traffic controllers, gave them A clearance. They didn't hold short, and there you go.
Yeah.
And I look at that and go, it's if you're in aviation long enough, you go, that could never happen to me. You don't say that because you've been there and go, wait, I've been with around, and I've had somebody hold me, and I've had to hold somebody else and go, wait, let's stop here because I'm not sure that's what he said. Mm-hmm. Let's clarify or whatever it is. And you do it all the time. Well, not all the time, but you do it, and it's kind of standard operating procedure. If you're not sure, if you're both not sure, stop.
Just stop.
And figure this out, and make sure we're on the same page. And the other thing is crossing the runway. Usually when you cross, you give it a cursory look. And I'm just wondering if they did that even, because if you're getting ready to cross and you see somebody on short final, you're kind of like, what happened there?
Texting.
Even though you got cleared, even if you got cleared across, it's hard. It's hard for me or any, my compatriots to cross a runway and not look, just in case the air traffic controller, had an issue. You can't be too safe, so to speak, in this.
When you have all these people's lives in your hands.
And nobody does it intentionally. There's just that. Yeah. But you sit there and go, man, if I hadn't stopped that captain, or if that FO hadn't stopped me that one time, out of whatever airport, could have. We, you
Ended
know,
in
they
disaster.
could have been telling us, you know, get ready to copy this phone number. That's the last thing a pilot wants to hear. You know?
Yeah.
You ready to copy the phone number? Oh man, this is going to be bad.
That's got to be scary. I mean, and it must be a little bit nervous. Oh, another thing too. Now we talked about this just a minute ago. Just a weird piece of information. But isn't it true that around the world, every air traffic controller in every country must speak English?
They have to use English.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, they don't have to use English to their countrymen, if you will. So when you go to, like, for me, flying a 737, going to Central South America, a lot of Spanish, you know, but, you know, that's understandable. They're speaking English to me, and me and the other pilot are deciphering it because sometimes it's better than other times.
Yeah. Spanglish.
But, you know, that there alone reduces your SA, because when you're everybody's understanding what everybody else is doing, you go, okay, United's doing this, Southwest turned final, you know, I'm in sequence. But if they're using Spanish, French, whatever it is, you're not picking up on that aspect of the situational awareness.
Right.
And, you know, it's something you're aware of going internationally.
It almost makes you think, well, if let's say I'm an air traffic controller in, I don't know, in Russia, right? And I have to speak English, but I only know Russian. What about other airlines that are coming into Moscow, you know, and you're thinking,
Well, that's why
all the pilots have to speak English too in other countries? They do?
Yes, it's a universal language.
Okay.
So if you want to have some fun, go to YouTube and look up Kennedy Steve. Okay. Steve, I think he's retired now, but he was a controller during my 21 years at Kennedy, and you will see what the language issues are. You know, because again, Kennedy's a big international airport, and it's humorous to listen to, but you can see where language can be an issue.
Right.
In aviation, and that's why, for whatever reasons that we don't want to go into today, but I mean, English is the standard, you know, aviation English, and you have to be, I think, a level 3. There's some sort of capability you have to have before you're cleared, either in the cockpit or.
Well, I noticed that when you fly in any other country, or you go to any other country, most people know English anyway. So
it's true. It's true. I mean, but. There's various capabilities of English,
right?
You know, and I remember flying in Africa, and when I was in the Air Force, and we got this clearance, and I looked over to the captain, and I kind of like, I didn't get any of that, and he goes, this is what they said. I go, how do you know that? He says, well, because I've been here before, experience, okay, and if you look at your map, this is what you should get cleared for. You can see what, you know, what they're supposed to be saying. And if it doesn't match up, then you clarify.
That's the problem.
But it's one of those experience things that I intimated, you know, that you know, again, I looked over, I just remember it was like, I haven't a clue what he said.
Hope we're doing the right thing.
You know? But he said, you know, and it was right. And after that trip, I was now the experience. I knew how to do that. You know, I knew, okay, this is my, you know, this is what they should be clearing me. This is how I'm going to do it. And so it's that experience level again just comes in where totally qualified, could have been, you know, but experience and somewhere else doing something else.
Yeah.
You know, it's a factor.
I want to thank our sponsor, Tri-Peak Roofing, Hernando County's roofer. And, you know, by the way, we have this helicopter flying overhead right now. It's, so, you know, talking about airlines and flights, you know, here we got it. So I don't know if this is going to disturb our audio, but hopefully not. I want to get into a real tragic incident in Philadelphia earlier this year in January when a medevac flight, it's a Learjet, crashed. I believe it just nosedived right into Philadelphia, killing everyone on board. And I believe it killed one person on the ground, injured quite a few others. So this is not, I know it's not an American airline, it's a Mexican airline. But, what are your thoughts on something like that? Even if it's just your thoughts on, safety compared to other countries.
Well, wow. It seems to me a catastrophic failure. And it seems to me to be a flight control issue because they lost total control, it seems to me. And as tragedies go, that it doesn't get much more tragic than a medevac taking somebody home that,
Yeah.
but that's about as much SA as I have on it. Now, internationally, I think we do the best maintenance in this country. I really do. Probably, countries like Australia, United Kingdom, the Western, but there's other parts of the world that I don't think I'd have as much trust in.
I got a question. Do you think helicopter crashes are more apparent around the world? I mean, does that happen more often around the world globally? Helicopters? Or what's safer?
Yes.
Should I not get on a helicopter? Or what?
Well,
Like Kobe Bryant? And
yeah, I mean,
but in Mexico City, don't they always just fly helicopters all over?
yeah, I mean, it's
Building to building.
you gotta look at the mission, to a certain extent, and there's a lot of moving parts on a helicopter, for one thing. But when you are doing medevacs, it's a dangerous mission. I mean, you're landing on roadways. A lot of times where accidents are, you're landing in fields. There's a lot. You're landing on small helipads in some cases. Although safe and qualified, so the mission sometimes has something to do with,
Gotcha.
what the accident rate is on any given. So when you look at helicopters, if you're looking at corporate helicopters, pretty safe. You're taking off from an airport, going to another airport that's close by, going from Kennedy over to Newark, or, giving somebody the lift that way. But if you're
Pulling
doing
someone off Everest, not so good.
yeah. I mean, if you're doing rescue, like we did up in Iceland, I mean that's.
Tell us about your Iceland
it's a little tricky.
adventures. Tell me a little bit about that.
That was being a bush pilot essentially. I mean, we were landing on glaciers, we were landing on pinnacles. It was very challenging. Hoist operations out over the North Atlantic at night. One war story. I mean, we were rescuing a Russian off a Russian trawler, and
I like how you just said trawler.
well, here's why I say that. We got out there, and we had the pararescue guys on board, and we're out at night, and we have a C-130 that gives us vectors. And I still remember the radar navigator. His name was Oscar, and he goes, "If you don't see him now, climb, because I can't tell the two of you apart." Okay? And right about then, I saw the trawler off to our right, and because we're down underneath, trying to get on our cloud deck, and we get over there, we had a heck of a time getting a PJ down because of all the, not fishing poles, but antennas. But
they were fishing poles to him.
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Sneaky.
But we did get the guy off. He had a ruptured appendix. We got him back to Reykjavik. But to my point about the mission,
Correct.
we did stuff that was not milk runs, So that's the So I would if I had a choice today, somebody says you want to fly this or this, if a helicopter or some fixed wing, I'd do a helicopter in a minute. I just enjoyed that.
But like you said, it's the mission. It's commercial, airport to airport, no problem.
Right.
You're doing some rescues. You're doing some fire. Working with whatever types of things.
Well, yeah. Speaking of fires, the guys that fly those bombers for the Forest Service.
Yes, Forest Service. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I looked into that. And my wife goes, "No,
no.
you're not doing."
She put her foot down on that one, right?
That's a bad idea.
Would you ever fly there? I always see those helicopters coming there dropping big water.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah,
that's what he's
dangerous
talking about.
with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's
Saying exactly that.
I mean,
Okay.
because you're dealing with a lot of. You're dealing with fire down below
Risk.
you, that creating updrafts that you're dealing with. So yeah, So again, the mission is
Gotcha.
a really big part of whatever you're flying. And
So let me get to the point here, and I think people again, there's some trepidation across the country. I think people are getting a little bit concerned, which rightfully so. That is it still safe to fly? And I know what you're going to say. Of course it is. I mean, it's still the safest mode of travel in the country, right? But are we just seeing the tip of the iceberg of what could be coming down the pike here for airline traveling in the United States?
I don't think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think what we're seeing is a culmination of a lack of safety first from the leadership. And if you're going to have the safest possible industry, you hire the best possible people for the task. Okay. And I think we've gotten away from that. And so I think we're going to get back to it. But when I went to flight school, my first flight school, first thing I ever flew was a helicopter. And at the time, the Air Force sent you to Fort Rucker, okay? And the number one graduate, I still in our class, her name was Julie Sandman. She was from Rice University. She was a Rhodes Scholar, and she could fly a helicopter. Wow. I mean, there was 60 guys in the class. She was number one, okay? And but in the same class, you had somebody that wasn't that good. And, but...
Y'all graduated?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
You pull people through that aren't, or give them so many more chances
than they should.
And they just don't have the aptitude or whatever it is. And that's disappointing,
That's not
good.
Good.
And DEI is dead now, I think, but hiring people based on ethnicity, or gender is just wrong, and especially in industries like this. But I think it's wrong, morally wrong.
In any industry, in any
condition. Right. And so that's Mark Cioffi's take on it.
Right.
But
well, you know what? I think we've learned that
the
this
best
country,
qualified take the best positions. I don't know.
Well, merit based is
correct.
We've always been that way as a country, and suddenly we went through a little phase there where we had to accept
I thought
other factors.
Do you think the media's just covering a lot of these incidents much more now because after this administration?
No, I don't believe there were
all over the place, and they're just trying to put egg on Trump's face. That's what.
No. There were no incidents like this in a row.
Saying, but they're doing. They're just everything is just.
Well, it's like shark attacks, right?
Seem like they're trying to put fear.
It's the shark attack syndrome,
Correct.
right? It's like you get one. If the news covers one shark attack, then
it's
two.
affecting us, or now anything. If a wing flutters on a plane, we're going to hear about it.
Well, yeah. Or you see all the videos of flames coming out of you see a lot of those YouTube videos and things like that where you have failures.
But I'm sure that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just the culmination of the lack of focus on the meritocracy aspect of the industry as a whole. But I'm flying next Friday, cross country, visit family. I have no trepidation about it. But we can do better. That's
always about doing better.
And again, we can talk about it ad nauseum, but you want the best people. Period. It's just like any team. You want the best people. To have a winning team, and I think that's what we should get back to.
So you don't believe that we're going to see a lot more of this not because of the current administration, but because of the old issues that they're going to start showing up more frequently. Now, I'm not even talking about in airline incidents, possibly, but maybe even in manufacturing, like Boeing, and they're hiring people again, not merit based. So are we going to see some?
Well, in this industry, it does manifest itself in a way that it doesn't in the car industry. Say, you know what I'm saying? It can be fairly in your face and in the news, so to speak. So I think the paradigm has changed most recently, and people are like, I want the best for whatever, whether it's my, operating on my kid or, flying my kid or whatever it is. And there's people out there, and they're of all gender, both genders. They are.
Wait, are there two?
93.
I thought there were more than two.
97.
And they're of all ethnicities. And, you got to got to go with that,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the best way to do it. And,
Look, and they've turned this country, and again, you know how they've done, and you know who we're talking about, they use things like this to try to demonize the right. Okay, and I'm just going to make a political statement right now. You don't have to join in, but this is a tactic they've used throughout history, which is to demonize the right through either race, and now more recently with gender and trans, the LGBTQ, those things. They use those things. Say, oh wait, you're the right, so you hate all these other people, and so therefore you're homophobic or all these things. And that's how I believe they've used it. And I think it's failing now. I think it's starting to go away, and hopefully it is. Do you think
and conquer?
Yeah, I mean, do you think this administration, which I think is doing a great job so far in just less than 100 days, do you think this administration and the common sense has come back to the country? And that we're going to see a revival of the good old days, of America.
It sure seems that way.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems that way to me, and I'm optimistic. And
Right.
I think the last election was a tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
And I praise God for
Mm-hmm.
I think we're tipped in the right direction now. But that's my take on it. I as much as anybody want the best, safest, and you know what, you
This
have an
country needs to
aptitude.
unite. We just need to unite. There's such little,
Well,
we're getting there.
we're getting there.
It's common sense.
Yeah,
So we have to get back to this common sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Again, I want to thank you for coming on. I mean, we still got a few minutes left here. I want to talk about a few other issues.
Okay.
But it's just what I wanted to do this for was to try to, put people's minds at ease. Bring a professional pilot on who has years of experience, understands.
PhD doctor.
Yes. So I mean, we got to get somebody in here that could explain to people. Look, it's flying is still safe.
It is.
Don't be afraid to get on a plane. But I think they have rightfully have their concerns are genuine.
I have a concern too. I mean, but again, it's like post 9/11. People ask me, "Would you get on a plane?" And I was, "Yeah, I got on one yesterday. On the 12th or 13th. Whenever the plane started flying again, I go because, it's the overreaction that you're having to the issues that are there, is there. I mean, like the helicopter route is closed, and some of the routes are now closed in DC, completely gone, and. So we've eliminated that, but I hope that they figure out a way.
You brought up, and I'm going a little tangent here. I remember there was a push. I think it was by the Republicans who was pushing this, was to shut down Reagan. And they were talking about this before.
Yes.
Is that still on the table? What are they thinking? I think that's the greatest airport in D.C. I mean, why do you want to fly to Dulles and drive 45 minutes to D.C.? I mean, or Baltimore.
It is because of the challenges of going in and out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, that airport is old and it's small when planes didn't need as much runway. I mean, it's a challenging runway.
Yeah. I remember back you probably remember this one. I remember what year it was, in the 80s when the plane crashed in the Potomac and they rescued all those people. Remember, it was caught on video rescuing people with helicopters. Right? Do you remember that one with the icy waters of Potomac?
Yeah. It hit the bridge.
Yes, hit the bridge.
Yeah,
it actually killed somebody on the bridge, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but it was that brings back memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
that was an icing situation on the
wings.
aircraft. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it a takeoff or a landing?
Takeoff.
It was.
Yeah.
It couldn't get out. It couldn't get out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I just popped in my mind about that one. But anyways, back to the airlines again. So I'm gonna bring up a little. This is gonna kind of go on some little weird stuff now. Some things that I think some interesting facts about flying. And I think people look at the globe, right? I'm not talking about flat earthers, right? So, I don't know if you're a flat earther or not, but no.
He's a flat earther.
Because we just fly straight in a line. That's it, from one end to the other, and that's it. So, but
so much truth in that.
one way to look at
right,
it.
Right. Yeah. Just A to B. That's it. Don't go too far. You fall right off, right? But the thing about when you look at a map and you're flying to Europe and you see, and people maybe don't understand why this happens, but you fly in this arc, right? It appears on the map as an arc. You go up towards Iceland, Greenland, and you come back down into Europe. So people are like, why do they do that? Can you give our audience an explanation of all about that?
China, you have to go up. It's just the rotation of the Earth. It's the Earth.
Well, there's more to that. More to that.
It's round.
Yes.
It's turning, and you go up and over.
Yes, but there's something to do with the jet stream
Well, yes, that too.
and saving fuel and things like that. Right?
Yeah, well,
As the Earth's coming in. It's better
going
that
to
way.
Europe, they have what they call the NAT tracks, North Atlantic tracks, and I've flown those.
Okay.
In the Air Force many times, and it's just a matter of sequencing traffic.
Oh.
It's busy between the East Coast and Europe, and certain times it's really busy.
Yeah,
so they have tracks, and you get cleared on tracks with a set distance between, because there's no radar out over the North Atlantic.
I was going to ask that. There's a blind point between there. Isn't there?
Yeah. So you fly it.
We fly over the North Pole when we leave from like New York to Hong Kong. You fly over the North Pole.
Yeah,
that's a different route.
That's a different.
Yeah, that's a different route.
Yeah.
Going. I'm just talking about the North Atlantic route.
Europe,
Gotcha.
New York to Europe. that
Yeah,
kind of thing, yeah.
But it's just a matter of traffic separation. There's I think 5 or 6 tracks.
Okay.
And they're stacked by altitude. So when you get your clearance, you get cleared a track and an altitude.
Right. You
And
stay
then-
in that altitude.
Yeah. Well, you can get changed to another altitude, but you have to do it on HF frequency and connect to air traffic control to do that.
Okay.
And make that happen.
Yeah.
Usually
there's no reason to do it, though, right?
Mostly not, unless the winds are really bad. You're stuck at 2.9 crossing the Atlantic, and you're going.
Yeah.
I got 80 knots off my nose. And I know the wind's up above me, or 40 knots. So you will try and leverage that if you can.
Well, the average, what's it, about 39 to 40 is usually the average.
Average what?
Altitude crossing the Atlantic.
Yeah, the tracks go. I believe it's 2.9 to 4.1.
Okay.
So, and most of the tracks are in the 3s.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just an interesting little tidbit of information, and I don't know if there's anything else. Is there anything else you want to tell us that tell our audience? Any interesting facts about commercial airlines, or anything you've done in your past? Any interesting stories? Oh, we still got a few
I got a
minutes.
question. Does the seatbelt make a difference? In the plane.
Turbulence.
Does the
Oh,
seatbelt help? Should I wear the seatbelt or not?
yes,
Okay.
yes. And I'll give you an instance.
All right.
All right. Flying Atlanta to, I'm going to say San Diego. Flying at night, clearing a million, and just enjoying the view, so to speak. And we get toward Oklahoma, and I'm looking, everything's good. And then ATC contacts me and goes, do you see that thunderstorm? And I go, no. He goes, it's right in front of you. And I take my radar and I tilt it down, and here's this thunder bumper that was, I couldn't go around. I couldn't maneuver.
No time to maneuver.
No time to maneuver. I called the flight attendant. Says, everybody strap in. And if you're in the aisle,
It was on.
and we hit severe turbulence. As I had to take it, and it was like we were glad everybody was strapped in.
Correct.
Because it happened fast enough that I couldn't maneuver, and it just so happened the tilt on my radar was such
You
that
couldn't
it
see
just
that little.
it was just a little green dot, and then I just tilted it down a little bit more, and it's a big red blob, and I'm kind of like, I said something like, "Oh darn," and
Have your attention, passengers.
yeah, strapped, yeah, it did, absolutely,
Yeah, quickly.
yeah, and flight attendant, actually, 2 of the passengers held the flight attendant on the floor on her shoulder,
She couldn't get back to her seat in time.
No, no.
Wow.
So
Wow.
she sat it out on the floor. So yes, I'm a
Some
fan
food
of
for thought. Thank you.
A fan
I
for
feel better.
seatbelts.
I'm a fan for seatbelts when you're, just thinking it's clearing a million and you're smooth, and the other is sometimes you hit turbulence, just clear air turbulence.
Just don't know what's coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because of the jet, or something like that, the jet stream. So, but they do a really good job of letting you know where the turbulence is, and now the radar's gotten such that it does pick up turbulence, which is kind of cool.
Wow. Okay.
So it's getting safer. That the technology is making it safer all along.
All right. So how about this question? And this is one of the ones that I think a lot of people have asked. I don't know. Maybe I'm the last to know this, but what about turn off your your electronic devices? What does it, has there really ever been an issue with that? Does that mess up an airplane? I mean, is that just a bunch of crap?
Malarkey.
Malarkey. That's it.
And actually, I watched a YouTube video on this. Okay, it's on YouTube. If you want your expertise, go to YouTube, right? But it actually has to do with overloading the towers, and it's what I heard, and so.
If you pay for it,
but
you're good.
There is an element of truth to it.
Yeah,
then.
there's an element to it.
Okay.
But,
All right.
I mean, now I get on like Southwest, and I just I got the Wi-Fi, right there. So
all right.
Well,
we're gonna go ahead and say goodbye to Mark, and want to thank him very much, Mark, for taking your time today. We had a few glitches in getting this show going this morning or this afternoon, but I think it went well, and I think it's very informative for our audience. And is there any last words you want to say on your?
No, I enjoyed it. Fly often, and enjoy the ride. But as we see the country changing, I'm a fan of changing it for the better, and I think we're on that trajectory now.
Yes.
And I think most of the populace in this country, the majority of people are seeing it and going, yeah,
great.
So.
Rome wasn't built in a day. We'll get there, though.
Yeah.
We're seeing some
but
changes.
I think we're still the
seeing a lot
best.
of good changes. No,
Still think we have the best, safety record of any. I know we do of any country in the world, and I think we'll stick to that and only get better. So, well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate the invite. Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I want to thank our sponsor, Tri-Peak Roofing, your Hernando County roofer, and I want to thank our producer, Jay Fernandez. This show would not be possible without you, buddy.
You're welcome. Tightening it up.
So, see you next week on Get Real.